My name is Tara, and I'm turning 18 this year. This is my story, a record of how I reclaimed my life after being born with a disability and abandoned by my birth family. From the moment I was born, my body was different from other children's. My legs and back were extremely weak, and I heard the doctors told my parents she will need to use a wheelchair for the rest of her life. Though I was born into what appeared to be a comfortable middle-class family in suburban Boston, life with my parents and my sister Demi, who was 3 years older, was far from happy. My parents couldn't accept my disability. My father, in particular, who was a successful lawyer, had envisioned a perfect family and found it difficult to accept having a daughter in a wheelchair. My mother, a housewife, put on a show of being devotedly caring for me, but from her complaints during phone calls with friends, I knew that deep down she saw me as nothing but a burden. Meanwhile, my sister Demi was a popular cheerleader at school and our parents' favorite. She was their pride and joy, perfect in every way. She maintained straight A's and was expected to follow in our father's footsteps to Harvard University. This sister of mine showed obvious disgust toward me. "I can't invite friends over because of Tara. Because of you, we can't go out like a normal family." The daily struggles were immeasurable. When I needed to use the bathroom, my parents would make me wait until they finished watching their Netflix shows. If I had an accident as a result, they would yell, "Why do you have to be such a troublesome child?" Even moving around the house was difficult. They complained it was too much hassle to make space for my wheelchair, so I couldn't even move freely in my own home. The struggles continued at school. Though I had poor eyesight, they wouldn't buy me glasses, so I could barely read what was written on the blackboard. My mother would say, if we had that kind of money, we'd need to buy new cheerleading outfits for Demi, putting even my basic needs last. In all of this, my only solace was my paternal grandparents. My grandfather, a retired university professor, and my grandmother, a former elementary school teacher, always welcomed me warmly when I visited on holidays. The aroma of my grandmother's homemade apple pie and my grandfather's words, "You're special, Tara," were all that kept me going. My sister often used my vulnerabilities to threaten me. "I'll tell Mom and Dad. I'll tell everyone." That's how she managed to take away the precious fountain pen my grandmother had given me and what little pocket money I had. It wasn't just bullying, it was psychological control. My parents and sister made it a habit to go out for meals and shopping without me. They wouldn't take me on family vacations, saying, having a wheelchair would be too much trouble. Left alone at home, I often had to make do with microwaved frozen meals, and sometimes was even told to use diapers. For a 12-year-old girl, this was the ultimate humiliation. When I entered middle school, my parents made a shocking announcement. "We've decided to move to New York. But you'll be living with your grandparents." Mother delivered this news matter-of-factly in the living room during what they called a family meeting. They had decided to move to a luxury apartment in Manhattan, choosing to leave behind their burdened me. "We only want normal children. You've always been nothing but trouble." Mother's words pierced my heart like an icy blade. Demi wore a triumphant smile. This day would change my life dramatically. Though the pain of being abandoned by family cut deep, it was also the beginning of a new life. In the car heading to my grandparents' house, I quietly shed tears. My parents and sister, already excited about their new life, seemed to have forgotten about me entirely. Their cheerful discussion about their new life in Manhattan felt like daggers in my ears. In a quiet suburban neighborhood in Boston, on Maple Street, stood a white two-story wooden house. At its entrance, my grandparents warmly welcomed me. As I watched my parents' car disappear, I couldn't hold back my tears. "Tara, we're so happy to have you here." My grandmother embraced me gently while my grandfather nodded quietly behind her. "But I'm just a burden," like Mom said. As I sobbed, my grandfather let out a deep sigh. "That's not true, Tara. You're not a burden at all. If anything, your parents." He cut himself off mid-sentence. Looking at me with the intellectual gaze befitting a former Harvard professor, he said, "Wait 10 years. They'll be the ones who regret this." There was a strange certainty in my grandmother's words. From that day on, my life began to change dramatically. First, my grandparents renovated their house to make it wheelchair accessible. They installed ramps and handrails and remodeled the bathroom so I could move around freely in my wheelchair. These were renovations that had been perpetually postponed at my parents' house because they cost too much. "Tara, this is your room." The second-floor room I was shown was a spacious area filled with bright sunlight. With the installation of an electric lift, I realized for the first time that I could go upstairs on my own. On the wall hung a handmade decoration that read, "Welcome home, Tara." The change in my living environment freed my spirit as well. My grandmother's cooking seemed magical to me, who had only known frozen meals. Homemade macaroni and cheese, cinnamon rolls, roast turkey. I discovered the warmth of American home cooking for the first time. "Tara, would you like to cook together?" My grandmother invited me into the kitchen. She had adjusted the height of the counter so I could work from my wheelchair. "But can someone like me really cook?" "Don't worry. Everyone's a beginner at first." Under my grandmother's guidance, I gradually learned to cook. When I made mistakes, I was never scolded. Instead, I was encouraged with words like, "You'll do even better next time." This experience became my first step toward regaining confidence. The changes in my education were even more dramatic. My grandparents took me to an eye doctor right away. "Why haven't you been wearing glasses when your vision is so poor?" My grandfather was shocked when he saw the diagnosis results. "They said there was no money, my parents." "That's in the past now. We'll provide everything you need from now on." The moment I put on my new glasses, the world transformed. I could clearly see what was written on the blackboard and keep up with lessons. My grandparents also arranged for a tutor. "Hello, Tara. Let's study together." The teacher had extensive experience teaching students with disabilities. She taught me carefully from the basics, matching my pace. "Tara, you're not unintelligent at all. In fact, you're very smart. You just needed proper support." The teacher's words changed something inside me. My grades at school rose dramatically. I showed remarkable progress, especially in mathematics and science. The patience I had developed living with a wheelchair unexpectedly worked to my advantage in studying. My classmates' attitudes began to change too. "Tara, could you help me solve this problem? Can I join Tara's group for math study?" I went from being seen as just the disabled girl to being recognized as a capable student. I made my first real friends. After school, classmates increasingly came to study at my grandparents' house. My grandmother would prepare cookies and lemonade for us, and my grandfather would occasionally offer hints for difficult problems. "Tara, seeing your smile is our greatest happiness." My grandmother's words brought tears to my eyes. It was the first time I truly felt the warmth of real family. By this time, my parents only called about once a month. Strangely, I didn't feel lonely. Life with my grandparents was far more fulfilling. "Tara, your future is filled with endless possibilities." My grandfather's words were deeply etched in my heart. While my disability was certainly part of me, I learned through living with my grandparents that it wasn't a barrier to life. When high school began, I continued to grow even more at my new school, commuting from my grandparents' house. Winthrop High School had excellent support systems for students with disabilities. They had elevators, specialized desks, and even note-taking services. The teachers understood my situation and provided appropriate support. "Tara, would you be interested in joining the programming club?" An invitation from my computer science teacher would change my life significantly. But with my wheelchair, computers don't care about legs. What matters is your mind. In the after-school programming club, I discovered a new world. Infinite possibilities spread from my fingertips on the keyboard. I still vividly remember the excitement when my first program displayed "Hello, World" on the screen. "Tara, your coding sense is remarkable." My grandfather proudly watched my growth. As a former professor, he sometimes taught me advanced mathematical concepts. My academic performance continued to improve steadily. I consistently maintained top positions in my class, especially in STEM subjects. I prepared thoroughly for the SATs, achieving a perfect score in mathematics and ranking in the top 1% overall. "Tara, why don't you apply to MIT?" At first, I was hesitant about this suggestion. Massachusetts Institute of Technology is the world's top engineering school. Someone like me going there? "You can do it. Your achievements prove it." Many people helped with my application. School recommendations, extracurricular achievements, and essays. I wrote honestly about my experiences and what I learned from them, including how my disability was part of me and the strength I gained from living with it. In my senior year of high school, I won the state programming competition. The local newspaper covered the story of a girl in a wheelchair receiving the award on stage. "Congratulations, Tara." My grandparents cried tears of joy. We took a photo at the entrance then. My smile was brighter than ever before. Then in December, I received my acceptance letter from MIT. Early action acceptance, with a full scholarship. "You did it, Tara." My grandmother hugged me while my grandfather smiled proudly. "This is all thanks to you both." "No, Tara. This is all the result of your own efforts." That night, my grandmother prepared a special dinner. The table was filled with my favorite dishes, with homemade apple pie for dessert. As we made a toast, I felt the happiest moment of my life. I didn't tell my parents and sister about my acceptance. They hadn't contacted us for about 2 years anyway. Occasionally, we heard about their life in New York. My father's law firm wasn't doing well, and my mother remained a spendthrift. Contrary to expectations, my sister Demi hadn't gotten into Harvard and was attending a local private college. I began to understand the meaning of my grandmother's words, "Wait 10 years." At my high school graduation ceremony, I gave a speech from my wheelchair on stage. My disability is part of who I am. But it's not a limitation. With proper support and love, anyone can pursue their dreams. Loud applause filled the auditorium. My grandparents' tearful faces in the front row looked radiant. I had changed greatly over these 3 years. The girl who had been plagued by complexes had grown into a confident young woman. This wasn't just about improved academic performance, it was about internal growth. "Tara, you've become such a fine young woman." I nodded deeply at my grandmother's words. The new life awaiting me at MIT, and the future beyond it, was no longer something to fear. The love of a true family and the importance of believing in one's possibilities. Through life with my grandparents, I had gained something invaluable. Life at MIT was even more exciting than I had imagined. The campus was completely wheelchair accessible, with ample consideration for my needs. State-of-the-art technology and brilliant peers from around the world, this environment was perfect for helping my talents bloom. Classes in the computer science department were challenging but stimulating. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and software engineering. In these fields, I could fully utilize my natural logical thinking abilities. Your approach to algorithms is quite unique. A project that received such praise from my professor would later be presented at an academic conference. The ability to do things efficiently that I had developed through wheelchair life proved valuable in the programming world too. My grandparents visited me every weekend. They would listen intently to stories about my college life while having lunch together in the campus cafeteria. "Tara, your eyes are sparkling." I wholeheartedly agreed with my grandmother's observation. In my sophomore year, I received a summer internship offer from Google. 3 months in Silicon Valley. This opportunity became a turning point in my career. I want to develop innovative software for people with disabilities. That became my new goal. The assistive technology project I worked on during my internship received high praise within the company. "We need engineers with your perspective." My supervisor's words further strengthened my confidence. As a junior, I also took entrepreneurship classes. With friends I met there, I started developing applications to support people with disabilities. This project would later become an independent startup. We want to create a world where everyone can live authentically through the power of technology. Our vision moved many investors. Before graduation, I had already received offers from several major tech companies. I ultimately chose Microsoft. I saw great potential in their commitment to supporting people with disabilities. Congratulations, Tara. We are so proud of you. My grandparents were genuinely happy with my decision. Work was going well. From my first year, I was assigned as the leader of a project developing new features for improved accessibility. It was an ideal position where I could utilize both my experience as a wheelchair user and my skills as an engineer. I always returned to my grandparents' house during vacations. My old room remained exactly as it was. Awards from high school still hung on the walls, and textbooks lined the shelves. This would forever be my true home and the foundation of my heart. Hey Tara, do you remember the first day you came here? My grandmother said while opening an old album. How could I forget? That day changed my life. I now live in my own apartment in Seattle. It's a smart home designed with wheelchair living in mind. At work, I continue to achieve remarkable results. Every month, I send part of my salary to my grandparents. Though they say, you don't need to do that, this is my choice. My gratitude to them can never be expressed in words alone. In my third year at Microsoft, the voice recognition technology my team developed improved the lives of many people with disabilities. This achievement led to my selection for Time magazine's 30 Under 30. In the article, I said, disability might be a gift that brings new perspectives. By accepting and utilizing it, we can make the world a better place. I still haven't heard from my parents and sister. But that's no longer an issue. I have my real family. And I have the confidence to walk my own path. On weekends, while video chatting with my grandparents, I often reflect. 10 years ago, that decision seemed like my greatest trial. But now I understand it was the greatest turning point in my life. Are you happy? My grandmother asks through the screen. Very much so. They both beam at my answer. Life sometimes takes unexpected turns. But what truly matters is the people you meet along the way and the strength you find within yourself. That's what I firmly believe. It was just another peaceful Sunday when my smartphone rang in my Seattle home where I had been writing code. It was a call from my grandfather. Tara, I need to tell you something. There was an unusual tension in his voice. Your parents and sister are here. At those words, my fingers froze above the keyboard. A reunion after 10 years. However, it wasn't what I had imagined. The next day, I took time off work and flew to Boston. When I arrived home, I found my aged parents looking markedly older and my sister wearing heavy makeup. Tara. My mother's voice had lost its former arrogance. My father had closed his law firm. Failed Wall Street investments and their luxurious lifestyle had taken their toll. My sister Demi's career as a beautician hadn't worked out, and she had gone through a divorce. We need to borrow money. My mother hesitantly brought it up. We can't pay our mortgage. I listened to their story in silence. The family who once called me a burden had now come seeking financial help. The irony couldn't be more stark. I know very well who my real family is. My words were met with complete silence in the room. People who never showed true love have no right to influence my life now. As my father started to speak, my grandfather quietly said, "We told you 10 years ago. We said you'd be the ones with regrets." My sister suddenly became emotional. Well, look who's acting all high and mighty. You're still just a wheelchair dash. Demi. My mother's voice cut her off. But it was too late. I responded calmly. I am now a senior engineer at Microsoft, doing work that helps many people. I've been featured in Time magazine, and I earn more than enough. Most importantly, I have a real family. My parents' faces showed their shock. But you your disability." My father's words trailed off. "Yes, I am disabled. But that's part of who I am, and I'm proud of it. By accepting and making the most of it, I've become who I am today." I stopped my parents as they tried to stand up. "Regarding the money, I must decline. Instead, I'll be filing a claim for 10 years' worth of child support and compensation for emotional distress." My father's face turned pale. As a lawyer, he understood that this claim would be legally valid. "Wait, Tara. It's too late. Everything ended when you abandoned me." My grandmother brought in some warm tea. Its aroma helped ease the tense atmosphere. "Everyone makes mistakes. But you can't run from the consequences." At my grandmother's words, my mother broke down in tears. In the end, my parents had no choice but to accept my terms. Monthly payments began, marking the definitive end of their luxurious lifestyle. This incident became talk of the community. The parents who had abandoned their disabled daughter were severely criticized, while my grandparents, who had raised me so well, earned respect from many. A year later, I established a non-profit organization supporting people with disabilities. Our mission: to create a society where everyone can live authentically through the power of technology. Life with my grandparents continues. I never miss our weekly video calls, and I always visit during holidays. The time spent with these two people, my life's pride and eternal support, is irreplaceable. Now, I'm writing a book about my experiences. It's not a tale of revenge against my parents. Rather, it's a story of hope, showing that anyone can flourish with true love and support. Real victory means living true to yourself. That's the greatest lesson I've learned from my life.